The opening scene shows our main character, Ian, trying to catfish a woman he's chatting with online. Just like his profile, all of the things she tells her are lies. When she sends him a bikini photo, Ian stops himself from acting like a simp, opting to send a slightly rude response instead. After he goes to bed, Ian experiences a naughty dream. Ms. Tasty, the girl he was chatting with, is sucking his popsicle. All the while, a barbell appears, and he performs a few bench presses. When he finally wakes up, he notices that he soiled his pants. So he takes off his underwear and tries to throw it in the laundry basket, but it doesn't go in. Shortly after, Ian's brother Rex rudely enters the room and demands he get out of bed since they need to be somewhere. Since Ian isn't wearing anything underneath, he tries to tell Rex that he'll get out soon. However, Rex is insistent. They end up getting into a tug of war until Rex finds out what's going on. To make things worse, their father, along with his girlfriend, barges into the room. Not giving anyone else a chance to speak, Ian's dad announces that he proposed to their stepmom. During the congratulatory mood, Ian's dad asks him to get out of bed and hug his stepmom, but we know he can't. The stepmom mistakes Ian's reluctance as a sign of rebellion, causing her to feel sad, and the dad to feel enraged. Furthermore, Ian's stepmom ends up slipping on the soaked underwear he had thrown earlier. In the next scene, Rex picks up Ian to take him to work. During the car ride, Rex asks Ian if he's gay, something that Ian vehemently denies. Despite accusing his younger brother of being gay, Rex talks about the subject like he's the one who is repressing his sexuality. At one point, Ian admits to talking to a girl online, but Rex makes fun of him. He thinks Ian is getting catfished and is actually talking to a guy. Later, Ian is shown working at a donut stall inside the mall. He can hardly focus because he keeps staring at different ladies, letting his hormones take over his brain. After greeting his co-worker, Becca, their boss asks who wants to be on mascot duty. Despite it being Becca's turn, she takes advantage of the weak-willed Ian, so he ends up doing the humiliating task again. While dressing up as a donut man, Ian gets pranked. Someone attaches a dong to his costume. A brief scene introduces the female lead, Felicia. She's trying on clothes to wear for her cousin's wedding. When said cousin tells her to get chest enlargement surgery, she cracks a dark joke towards the seamstress. However, the joke proves too dark and causes the woman to remember past trauma. In the same mall, the other important character is introduced. He is Lance, and right now, he's trying to flirt with the store employee, and he knows his stuff. His father is also there, talking smack about his mom. It's clear that Lance doesn't appreciate his father's crass tongue. Going back to Ian, he is still unaware of the thing strapped to him. He approaches a father and his daughter, talking about offering something yummy. The father mistakes him for a pervert, so he smacks Ian straight in the face, causing him to fall down a flight of stairs. Ian's friends come to his rescue, and a conversation ensues. Lance correctly guesses that Becca made him wear the costume again. So, he gives Ian some advice on how to rudely set boundaries, which according to Lance, is a way of wooing women as well. Felicia disagrees with Lance's manipulative tactics, and a short argument begins. Shortly after, Felicia takes her leave so Lance and Ian continue conversing. Once again, Lance tries to convince Ian to be meaner to girls, a concept that Ian heavily disagrees with. Then Lance points to two boys across the mall, Andy and Randy. He talks about how they are examples of men who are not afraid to shoot their shot. However, in reality, the two boys mentioned are just very socially inept and can't take social cues. This becomes evident by the odd way they talk to a woman who just approached them for donations. After work, Ian meets up with Rex, and they head home. Upon arriving, Ian is surprised to see Becca there. He thinks she's there because she accepted her invitation to Lance's party. However, she makes it clear that she's actually there for Ian's 14-year-old brother, not him. Later that night, Lance's party is in full swing, with tons of people attending and having fun, except for Ian. He's awkwardly sitting alone on a couch, not knowing who to talk to. Lance approaches Ian to give him a pep talk. He even introduces a girl to him, thinking that Ian can finally lose his virginity that night. When Lance mentions to the girl that Ian has no intimate experience, she instantly becomes interested in him. Moments later, Ian and the girl, Lindsay, are in a room together. However, all Ian does is talk about boring academic stuff. She takes the initiative, performing fellatio on his fingers. Unfortunately, the intimate moment is interrupted by Felicia, who wants to talk to Ian. During Felicia and Ian's conversation, she tells him that she has a crush on someone. Ian thinks she's talking about him, so when she asks him to guess who it is, Ian goes in for a kiss. Unfortunately, this results in a super awkward exchange, with Felicia pulling away and clarifying that she just sees him as a friend. When Ian returns to the room where Lindsay is, she sees him engage in an intimate act with multiple people. Even when he is invited to join in on the fun, Ian chickens out and exits. As he is exiting the house, he encounters Andy and Randy doing their usual thing, attempting to seduce women, and failing every time. He tries to ask them where their confidence is coming from, but the two idiots can hardly maintain a sensible conversation. Then, when Ian arrives home, he sees his crush making out with her younger brother. Ian retreats to the basement to continue chatting with Ms. Tasty. When he brags about having a nice car, she asks him to meet up with her. Ian makes up some excuses, but when Ms. Tasty promises to go all the way with him, he once again lets his hormones get the best of him. Ian's stepmother even catches him doing an embarrassing celebration ritual. The next day, Ian tries buying some condoms. Unfortunately, he comes across someone he knows who's working at the counter. They end up making fun of him, believing that he's buying the contraceptives for someone else. When he gets home, Ian opens one pack to see what the condom is like. He has no idea how to use it. Another awkward moment happens when his stepmother walks in. He accidentally flings the rubber, and it lands on her head. Seconds later, Lance walks in, expressing how proud he is that Ian is finally getting some action. Turns out, Ian's purchase was posted on a popular boys' blog site. The two friends continue the conversation, talking about Miss Tasty. Ian is hesitant to meet her, but Lance insists that he should, even if there is a possibility that she is a catfish. A while later, Lance and Ian are looking at Rex's car. Lance is convinced that if Ian shows up during the meetup driving, he will impress Miss Tasty. When Ian tries asking Rex if he can borrow his car, the latter says he'd never allow it. Fortunately, when Rex steps out for a bit, Lance locates where the car key is hidden, implying that Ian should just steal the car. Unfortunately, Rex returns and takes the key away, putting a dent in their plan. Still, hope is not lost, because Ian manages to swipe the key discreetly. A while later, Ian and Lance head out. They unexpectedly encounter Felicia, who is wondering where they are going. She insists she joins them on their trip. This causes Ian to make up a lie because she doesn't want Felicia to know he is driving miles just for a hookup. He comes up with the worst lie, saying he's visiting his grandma who has cancer. During the drive, the trio encounters another driver driving a fancy car. Lance taunts the other car, initiating a race. Unfortunately, the other car doesn't play fair. They throw food at Ian and the gang, obstructing their view and causing their crash to swerve off the road. It's a good thing they didn't crash and burn. Later, they stop by a gas station. Felicia encounters a weeping cashier, but she couldn't care less about her emotional well-being. Meanwhile, Lance doesn't miss the opportunity to swoop in and comfort the cashier. Ian is in the bathroom, trying to urinate. However, a very chatty man decides to position himself right beside him, striking up an awkward conversation. Felicia discovers a lady is stealing the fuel she paid for, so she intimidates her, getting back her gas. Ian steps out of the bathroom despite not having accomplished what he came there for. He discovers that Lance has brought someone else inside their car. It's the weeping cashier. He's determined to sleep with her, not caring about the fact that she is in such a vulnerable emotional state. The next scene shows just that. Lance in bed with the cashier. Felicia and Ian are in the living room with the cashier's parents, having an awkward conversation with them. They can't even focus, because they are too busy looking at the old man's exposed balls. Meanwhile, Lance is having the time of his life in the bedroom. At one point, Ian notices how uncomfortable Felicia is listening to the noises Lance is making. This is when he correctly guesses that Lance is Felicia's crush. The situation quickly escalates when the cashier's ex-boyfriend barges into the house, looking for the girl Lance is currently having a moment with. The man is ready to break down the door, but he doesn't have to. Lance exits the room on his own, with a part of the bed still attached to him. Turns out, the cashier was going to treat him like a toilet, so Lance had to bail. The next sequence of events is pure chaos. Lance runs to the cornfield while trying to evade the ex-boyfriend, who is determined to run him over with his vehicle. Fortunately, because of the bed frame, Lance survives the initial impact. The ex-boyfriend steps out of his truck and prepares to beat Lance with a bat. Just before he can swing, he gets struck by Ian's car. This gives Lance enough time to get in the car, and the trio make their escape. However, even while they are driving away, the ex-boyfriend gives them a hard time. They almost collide with him. When the trio is finally on the road, they spot a hitchhiker. They have no intention of stopping for him, but luck is not on their side. They run out of fuel, so the car stops right in front of the hitchhiker. He doesn't know they have no intention of helping him. The trio opens the front of the car to inspect what's wrong. Felicia shares that a similar thing happened to her brother's car, and all they have to do to fix it is urinate on the radiator. Lance goes first, but he quickly runs out of body fluids. Ian, on the other hand, can't do the deed when someone is watching him. Even when Lance steps away, Ian still has trouble urinating. The hitchhiker is also unable to help. Lance suggests Felicia should give it a shot, even if she can't aim the way they can. With no other options left, she answers the call of nature, making sure to fill up the radiator. To her horror, a car containing a family passes by, and they witness her in her most embarrassing moment. When Ian finally gets the car working, he immediately locks the car door, not allowing the hitchhiker to get in. When the man threatens him, he gives him a cocky response and hits the accelerator, only for the car to come to a screeching halt once more. The hitchhiker retaliates by pissing all over their car. A while later, Felicia and Ian go on a short walk and spot a strange tree. They see shoes hanging all over its branches, which is something Felicia finds beautiful. She even tosses her own shoes at the tree, despite Ian's disapproval. Meanwhile, a carriage driven by an Amish man named Ezekiel comes across Lance and offers help. At first, Lance doesn't take him seriously. However, when Ezekiel correctly identifies Rex's car and even recites its specifications, Lance is bewildered. He eventually rides Ezekiel's carriage and engages him in an enlightening conversation. This is when Lance finds out about the Amish tradition called Rumspringa, a period where Amish teens are more free to explore and try new things. This explains why Ezekiel is familiar with sports cars. After listening to Ezekiel's escapades in Vegas, Lance finally reunites with his friends. They end up staying for a while in an Amish village. Ezekiel tells Ian what's wrong with the car and promises to fix it, something that Ian finds surprising. Just when the trio is unsure what to do, they suddenly spot the band Fall Out Boys, another unexpected encounter. They end up listening to the band perform at one of the large barns, with a large Amish crowd going wild. At one point during the performance, a pretty Amish girl catches Lance's attention. Felicia warns him against trying to pick up the innocent woman, but Lance is sure he wants to seduce her. In the meantime, Ian steps out to check on the repairs while Lance and Felicia engage in slow dancing. Ian checks on Ezekiel's work and sees the car broken apart. Since he doesn't know how to fix cars, he thinks the Amish people are messing with him. This causes him to throw a tantrum, one that Ezekiel and his friends find amusing. His mood becomes worse when he returns to the barn and sees Felicia dancing with Lance. He walks away feeling jealous. Seconds later, Lance breaks off the embrace with Felicia to go and flirt with the Amish girl he spotted earlier. Disappointment is written all over Felicia's face. Outside, Ian tries to help an extremely drunk Amish woman. Shortly after, Felicia also arrives and decides to assist that drunk girl as well. Ian notices Felicia's upset face and correctly guesses the cause of her bad mood. Ian tries his best to console her, suggesting they enjoy the festivities instead of sulking. Felicia accepts, but she also makes him promise to never be a playboy like their friend. Meanwhile, Rex wakes up from a nightmare and checks if he still has his car keys. Upon discovering that his keys are gone, Rex shouts, cursing his brother. The next day, after waking up, Ian proposes the idea of going home. He's afraid of his brother's wrath. Lance insists that he should push through with the plan, still using the grandma visit excuse. At this point, Felicia is starting to suspect they are not telling her something. All of a sudden, Lance sees Mary, the Amish girl he likes. While talking to her, it becomes clear that she has no intention of pursuing a relationship with him, given the difference in their lifestyle. For the first time in his playboy life, Lance feels devastated. Seconds later, Ian hears a car engine rumbling. The car is finally fixed, and Ian expresses appreciation for Ezekiel and his team's effort. However, the conversation gets a bit awkward when Ezekiel tries to guilt-trip Ian into doing chores as a repayment. Since they are already behind schedule, Ian promises to come back at a later time. While on the road, Lance keeps sulking about getting dumped by Mary. Of course, Felicia finds this annoying. In another scene, Rex rushes to his garage to check if his car is still there. Upon confirming the theft of his car, Rex rages and breaks down the garage door, even chasing away a passing neighbor at one point. Going back to Ian, he's in a public restroom, answering the call of nature. He encounters a strange man who occupies the stall beside his. He finally gets reception on his phone, so he texts Miss Tasty, confirming that their meeting is still happening. When Ian tries to grab the toilet paper, his hand stumbles upon the strange man's schlong. Turns out the place is actually a makeshift glory hole. Ian runs out as fast as he can. Sometime later, Ian asks Lance why he's not going after any of the girls passing by. Lance admits that he can't get Mary off his mind. When Ian brings up Felicia, Lance admits that he knows Ian likes her. He takes the time to warn her not to let his feelings take over. After all, Felicia is their friend, and they shouldn't cross that line. Later, Ian participates in a carnival game and wins a lollipop as a prize. He immediately gives it to Felicia. Lance brings Ian's attention to the girl in front of them, urging his friend to shoot his shot. Lance even takes the lollipop from Felicia so Ian can give it to the girl. As a result, the girl invites Ian and his friends to a nearby show. Felicia clearly doesn't like what's happening, but she is forced to tag along. The show starts off with a dance performance. After this, the girl Ian is gunning for drags him on stage. He has no idea that he's about to be forced into an abstinence pledge. Before that, the host invites a pregnant teen to share her tragic story. During her speech, Ian spots the dancers undressing, and this turns him on. However, because of the way he is facing, the host mistakes him for getting turned on by the pregnant teen's confession. As a result, he is asked to make the chastity pledge first. After the embarrassing turn of events, the dancer girl approaches Ian and his friends outside the tent. Ian pushes her away, accusing her of deceiving him. She gets upset in response and chucks the lollipop at Ian, but it hits Felicia in the mouth instead. The trio takes a detour to the dentist's office to get Felicia's front teeth fixed. While there, Felicia brings up the awkward incident during Lance's party. She tells Ian that the only reason she rejected his kiss is because she didn't want to ruin the friendship. Ian reassures her that he understands and promises to be by her side. Later, Ian purchases a few things from a store. There, he spots a floral flip-flop and decides to purchase it for Felicia, since she's been barefoot all this time. After this, he meets Lance and proposes that they head back home, much to Lance's surprise. Of course, the playboy insists they continue the trip since they've already gotten quite far. While they continue their journey, Felicia notices that Ian is going the wrong way. He admits they're heading home. Felicia and Lance taunt Ian, mocking him for chickening out and goading him to go and finish what he started. Annoyed, Ian makes a reckless U-turn that impresses Lance. The trio encounters the green sports car once again, and they decide to indulge them in another race. This time around, after outmaneuvering the other car, Ian and his friends are victorious. However, immediately after winning, Ian runs over a Since the animal is still alive, Ian volunteers to put it out of its misery. Unfortunately, this act of mercy turns out to be a serious crime. Police immediately arrive at the scene and apprehend the trio, charging them with slaughtering an endangered species. While inside their jail cell, Lance warns Ian not to be intimidated by the inmates. He even gives a demonstration by talking back to a man who tries to start a fight with him. Unfortunately, when Ian tries the same thing, he gets punched in the face. He probably shouldn't have talked back to the detective. Meanwhile, in the women's section of the prison, Felicia is opening up to the female inmates. She admits that she has feelings for Ian. This causes the other inmates to give mixed advice. One woman even tells a story of how she dated her best friend for a while, but when they broke up, it was never the same between them. Felicia can't help but be moved to tears, not because of the sob story, but because the woman in front of her is taking a huge dump, and it stinks. Back in the boys' cell, Ian is finally able to urinate even when there are people around him, something that Lance thinks Ian should be proud of. The playboy continues to give Ian compliments to boost his morale, pointing out all his feats of courage. Then, an officer walks by and announces that the main characters are free to go because someone paid for their bail. At first they think Rex is the one who bailed them out. Turns out it was Mary, much to Lance's delight. As soon as Ian retrieves his phone, he receives a text from Ms. Tasty, giving him an ultimatum. This is his last chance to get rid of his V-card. Thus, the trio continue their journey, taking Mary with them. In the next scene, Ian prepares to go out to meet Miss Tasty. However, Felicia expresses her disapproval, telling him he shouldn't follow Lance's footsteps. Ian retorts, pointing out how everybody thinks he's weird because he's a virgin. He wants to do away with it. Just before he can step out, Felicia offers to be his partner instead. Ian thinks she's just pitying him, so he becomes more agitated. Out of anger, Ian blurts out that he's tired of being friends with her, tired of listening to all her bullcrap. This causes Felicia to storm out of the room. When Ian tries to head out again, his path is blocked by Rex, who is ready to kick his ass. They get into a scuffle, and Ian gets thrown around the room like a rag doll. The only way he manages to get out of the situation is by telling Rex he might be turning gay. Of course, Rex, being the homophobe that he is, doesn't want this to happen, so he lets Ian go. When Ian arrives at the meeting place, a man shows up. For a moment he thinks he got catfished. However, the real Miss Tasty shows up, and she's actually a pretty lady. Looks like luck is on his side. Ian lets her in and takes her for a ride. He doesn't notice that Felicia is actually hiding in the backseat of the car. During a brief scene, we see Lance having a fun time with Mary. At one point, they pause, and Lance asks if she's willing to move with him to Chicago. Mary makes it clear that such a thing won't be possible because her family would shun her if she did. Now back to Ian. He's finally making out with Ms. Tasty. Just when things are getting spicy, Ian decides to confess about painting a false picture of himself online. The woman doesn't really care. She just wants them to do the deed already. Ian continues going on about how there's actually someone he likes, so he can't continue whatever they're doing. Felicia, who is eavesdropping, is happy to hear Ian's statement. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse when a man comes out of nowhere and points a gun at Ian. Turns out Ms. Tasty is in cahoots with this man. They are actually carjackers. Ian is left in the street while the two thieves take away his brother's car. As they are driving away, he notices Felicia peeking out of the car. While driving, Ms. Tasty and the thief talk about their next plan. She asks the man to drop her off at another location, while he takes the car to a certain auto shop. Felicia hears this and takes a mental note of the details. She even tries texting Ian, but since his phone is in the car, the man, named Bobby Joe, receives the text instead. Meanwhile, Ms. Tasty tries to seduce the drivers of a green sports car, who happens to be Andy and Randy. In a moment of irony, the men who are always hitting on women chicken out when they finally meet someone who is not rejecting their advances. All of a sudden, a truck rams into Rex's car. It's the hillbilly boyfriend of the cashier lady, who Lance porked earlier in the movie. The man is taken aback when someone else, who isn't Lance, steps out of the car. Bobby Joe wastes no time. He brandishes his firearm so the hillbilly gives him the keys to his truck. Seeing the commotion, Rex steps out screaming and miserable, checking the damage to his car. He even tries attacking Bobby but gets swiftly knocked down. Lance also gets out to check what's going on, attracting the attention of the hillbilly. Felicia also crawls out of the car and gets spotted by Ms. Tasty. The scammer woman immediately orders Bobby Joe to dispose of her since she heard their prior conversation. Before things can get any worse, Ian arrives, wearing his silly donut costume, successfully tackling Bobby Joe. He manages to steal his firearm and holds everyone at gunpoint. Ian allows the truck driver to hit Lance once, so he can get even. Bobby Joe taunts Ian, saying he isn't capable of using the gun. Our main character fires a warning shot, and even shoots Bobby in the leg. Even when the criminal attempts to wrestle with him, Ian manages to take him down. Miss Tasty tries to run away, but Felicia stops her, and a catfight ensues. Not long after, the police finally arrive. They immediately point their guns at the person who stands out the most, which is Ian. After a shotgun is fired at our protagonist, Felicia steps in and points out who the real criminals are. After the police apprehend the real bad guys, Felicia goes over to Ian and thanks him for his act of heroism. They end up confessing to each other, which is promptly followed by a kiss, just like how these things usually go. Fast forward to a different time, the trio is at the Amish settlement again, doing some chores. Ezekiel fixes Rex's car once again. He even jokes about Ian owing them $42,000. Meanwhile, Lance makes a shocking decision. He tells Ian that he's staying there to live the Amish lifestyle. Ian doesn't believe him at first, but Lance is serious. The best friends bid farewell to each other, while wishing each other luck in life. A series of scenes provides closing exposition. Ian and Felicia are officially dating. Rex comes out as gay to his family. Then Ian and Felicia finally lose their V cards to each other. It would have been a romantic scene if Rex wasn't there to throw fireworks at them. And that's it.